Hi, welcome to Polyphonic Press. I'm Jeremy Boyd.
I'm John Van Dyke.
And today we're going to be talking about our favorite albums of 2014. Here we go. Alright, so we're not going to be ranking these albums in any particular order or anything like that. I don't really feel... It's hard to put your favorite albums of the year into a list of your most favorite and least favorite. There are certainly some that I like better than others, but it's hard to come up with, this one's better than that one, and it's hard because some of them are totally different genres.
It's also completely subjective.
Yeah. So we're just going to talk about our favorite albums. These are in no particular order. These are just some of the albums that either I liked or John liked or both of us liked over 2014. And the first one is one that you're more familiar with than I am. It's a band called Spanish Gold. Their debut album. Is it their debut album?
It's their debut
album called South of Nowhere.
It's Dante Schwebel. He was formerly of I think it's primarily his album his project,
right?
But he's with Patrick Callahan, formerly of I guess he's probably still a member of My Morning Jacket.
Oh, okay.
And they weren't doing anything this year. And another guy named Adrian Casada, who he's with a bunch of other bands too, but I wasn't too familiar with him. But whatever. He's he's part of this project as well. Anyway,
cool.
But Dante was in Hacienda, who I was a huge fan of. So when I heard this was coming out, I decided, I'm going to follow and check it out. So, and I'm glad I did, because it's a really good album.
Yeah, and it's sort of like a garage rock kind of blues sort of thing.
It does that quite a bit, but it's still got that sort of Texas. I don't know what you would call it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Cool. So yeah, check that out if you're not familiar with it. The next album that I really like is Rich Robinson. I reviewed it a couple weeks ago. Rich Robinson is the guitarist, former guitarist, I guess, from the Black Crowes, and along with his brother Chris, they pretty much were the Black Crowes. They wrote all the songs, and they Rich wrote the music and Chris would write the lyrics. And now that in the last 10 years or so that they've done solo projects, Chris has gotten more into writing the music and Rich has gotten more into writing the lyrics. And I actually think that this album is Rich Robinson's best work lyrically. I think this album, he's writing more interesting lyrics, more interesting songs. I think that just comes from practice, from his last two solo albums. His first solo album was more of he wrote the lyrics just out of necessity, because they were songs that he had been kicking around from the music from the Black Crowes, and he had a band between the Black Crowes and his solo album called Hookah Brown, and so he had those songs sort of written, the music, and sort of he wrote the lyrics out of necessity. And
not that they were really bad either.
They weren't bad, but you could tell that it was his first time sort of getting into that area. And so I think now that this is his third solo album, and even on Warpaint and the two Black Crowes albums in between, he even got some songwriting in there and lyrics. But this, he's done it all on his own, and I think this is probably his best solo album. It's not a rock and roll, like you would think that the guitar player from the Black Crowes would put out a hard rock album, but it's not that at all. It's really interesting textured guitars and really good lyrics. It's something that I really like. All right, so the next album I think is something that we're both fans of. It's Sloan's latest album, Commonwealth. Something I haven't actually gotten around to reviewing. Something I might do, I don't know, depending on what the future looks like. But Sloan's latest album, Commonwealth, is an interesting album in terms of how they approached it. They I think they were initially going to go with 4 solo albums, like the way that Kiss did in the late 70s.
Yeah, people have been requesting them to do that for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But they figured it's not Sloan. So they still wanted to, have a certain amount of a collaborative.
The thing about Sloan is people have always said, well, why don't you guys do solo albums? Why don't you ever just do something on your own? And then pretty much, if you know anything about the way that Sloan functions, is they pretty much do that anyway within the band.
Yeah, but it's song per song as opposed to grouping them all in an album.
Yeah. So what they've done is each side of the album, they've 4 members of Sloan are songwriters. And so...
Which is the 4 members.
All the members are songwriters. And so when you have an album, you're going to get mostly equal time for each member of the band. So what they've done now is, instead of sort of making the album flow from song to song and maybe 2 songs in a row from one guy and 1 song from another guy and another, instead of doing that, they've actually gone side. So each member gets 5 or 6 songs that they can, that's their side, and they can do whatever they want with it.
Seems to average around 4 or 5. Actually.
Yeah, and
except for the drummer, but he's nuts.
Andrew Scott basically took the opportunity to pretty much write an opera with his side, and it's pretty cool. I actually like it. I like it, but it's a little long. It's about 15-20 minutes long or something like that. So
don't be confused by the dog barking.
Yeah,
just
it starts off a little weird, but it's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't think this is Sloan's best album ever. I think that was probably either Twice Removed or Navy Blues or One Chord to Another. Those are my 3 favorite. I really
like the one they put it, the last one, Double Cross.
Double Cross is pretty cool.
That was a good one.
But I don't think it's their best work, but it's it's certainly worthy of being mentioned as a favorite album of the year, because it's just a good album overall.
It's
each songwriter, I don't think, really has there isn't a bad song on the album, and which is hard to do.
It's typical of Sloan to not have a bad song on an album.
And I think a lot of that comes from only being able to write 2 or 3 songs per member, so you don't have any filler, because you only have to write... You can write 10 songs and pick the 3 best of those 10
Chris,
songs.
you gotta do 3.
Yeah.
Jay, you gotta do 3.
Exactly. So yeah, Sloan's Commonwealth is another favorite. The next one is Jack White's Lazaretto, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and it's...
I went and got the silly vinyl.
Yeah, you've got the cool vinyl with the hologram and the double intro.
It's
it's
a fun thing to play with.
Yeah. Because Jack White is nuts. It's of his 2 solo albums, I think this is the better one.
I think so too.
I like that he's incorporated... He's been in Nashville for, 10 years almost?
Yeah.
So he's incorporated some country elements. I think being in Nashville has influenced him in that. The town has influenced this album more than his other work, where he's got steel guitars and fiddles on some of the songs, and I really actually like that. His voice and his sensibility... Well, I mean, he's worked with Loretta Lynn and all these people, these country people, so he's never really shied away from incorporating that, but I think this is the first time that Nashville has really influenced his work.
Well, he actually used to be in a couple of, maybe not country bands, but country-ish bands, even before the Stripes got big.
Right.
Like Goober and the Peas, and I think with Loretta Lynn, the Van Leigh Rose, that was definitely country endeavor.
Yeah.
So he's never really been that far removed from it to begin with. But he's also been very punk. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he's still got the rock and roll in that album too. I mean, he's not completely changing his pace, but he's definitely incorporating some elements that he hasn't really before. And he's sort of exploring the territory, so to speak. Next one is The Black Keys Turn Blue. This wasn't a huge album for me. It wasn't my favorite Black Keys album.
No, but
it's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
But I think you liked it more than I did.
It's a weird thing with that album. That's the album that came along. Like people have been saying, accusing the Black Keys of selling out and whatever since, not Brothers, but El Camino after that. It's just, this sounds like a pop album. Well, not really. It sounds like
it doesn't really.
It sounds. They got sort of like this indie Motown sort of thing going now, but they still have that Black Keys rootsy thing to the the base of it. But when Turn Blue came out, it's the one that freaked me out at first because the first single was Fever, and the main
almost
hook
like a disco
is a
thing.
synthesizer thing, and it did freak me out.
Yeah,
it had to grow on me.
Yeah,
and it did grow on me. The whole album grew on me. There's a couple of, there's more than a couple of really good tracks on that album.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I liked it. When I reviewed it, I didn't give it. I liked it the more that I listened to it.
Yeah,
and it's not a bad album. I like it more than I did when I reviewed it. So if there's anything you can take away from that review, it's that I like it now more than I did then.
Some of my favorite albums of all time are ones that actually grew on me.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, when I was just a kid and Wildflowers first came out, I didn't know what to make of it because it sounded so different than most Heartbreakers albums.
Yeah.
And it did have to grow on me, and now it's probably my favorite Tom Petty album. So,
and that's a good segue into the next album, which is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' Hypnotic Eye. Hypnotic Eye, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, certainly my favorite band. I think this album, I like Mojo. Mojo is a good album. It's a good blues album.
Yeah.
But
that's what they wanted to do with that one.
I like this album more because it sounds more like a Heartbreakers album.
It does. Yeah, the last one sounded almost like there's a lot of elements on it that really remind me of like the early Fleetwood Mac. And when I mean early Fleetwood Mac, I'm talking about Peter Green era Fleetwood Mac.
Fleetwood Mac, John Mayall, those.
This is like, a lot of
that has to do with Mike Campbell's 59 Les Paul.
Yes. Well, when he picked that thing up, he turned on his Peter Green, Clapton influences and whatnot. He really knows how to. Well, if anybody can make, a guitar live up to its full potential, it's Mike Campbell.
I think my favorite song on this album is probably Forgotten Man. It's kind of a Bo Diddley sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's the Heartbreakers' best work, but it's their best work in a while. This feels more like a Heartbreakers album than anything they've done really in the last 20 years. Echo and The Last DJ sound like a Tom Petty solo album with the Heartbreakers on it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
This sounds like a group effort. This sounds like a band working.
This really does sound, and in that sense, I can really hear see how they were saying, well, we kind of wanted to do what we were doing back in the Damn the Torpedo days.
Yeah.
And that comes through. You can really hear the Damn the Torpedo, Hard Promises sort of time. Yeah. It's very reminiscent of that. And they certainly didn't shy away from their influences from years previous to that. So.
All right, so the next album is Eels, The Cautionary Tales of Mark Oliver Everett. And I think this is another case of you liking this album more than I did. It's an okay album. It's a little more... It was a breakup or a divorce that he was going through when he was writing this?
I don't know. He, every once in a while, has these periods. Or at least maybe he's a little more... Maybe he's not anymore... he doesn't have these... He goes through these dark periods, but maybe not more so than other people, but he's usually way more open about it than most other people. And not in like an emo sense. Well, maybe it is a little bit in an emo sense, but anyway, I dig it anyway.
Maybe it's not more emo, it's more... This is actually how I'm feeling.
Yes, it's a little more honest.
Rather than look at me how sad I am.
Yes,
this is actually how I'm feeling.
This is actually darker than any emo stuff I've ever heard anyway. So
yeah.
But
But
it's
what
not.
what was it? Was it
strictly
a
dark.
breakup of a girlfriend or
No, I think.
or was he
maybe.
just feeling depressed? Or was that all it was?
I'm actually not entirely sure about the entire background of it. I just know that sometimes he has he's had a rough time of it. Like after his first album came out, well, the first Eels album anyway, came out, he had lost his sister and his mother in like 1 year.
Oh, okay.
So
that
he's had some other. I mean, that's of course like that was in the late '90s.
right.
So, but that was the first record that came out that had this sort of like, I don't know, where he really looked in on himself, and he's done that a couple of times. I think this is the third time he's really done that. The second one being Blinking Lights and Other Revelations.
Yeah.
That was 2005. But yeah, this is another one that came out, and it was supposed to come out actually a year prior, but didn't feel ready to do it yet. So he put out Wonderful Glorious instead, which is just a rocker. And you know, he's very prolific. He's always writing stuff down. He's probably got like stuff, you know, stashed in a corner I haven't heard yet, like most musicians do. But oh no, I seem to be losing my train of thought. Anyway, it's a good album.
Yeah. So definitely check it out.
And I also really like the bonus discs on both this one and the previous one.
Yeah.
So
The next one
album's more stuff.
is The War on Drugs, Lost in the Dream. This is an album that I was really surprised by how much I liked it. The War on Drugs, Kurt Weill, his band, I don't think he's in the band anymore. I could be wrong on that. But I thought it was going to be a typical indie rock album. I wasn't expecting to hate it, but I wasn't, and I thought it would be good. I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was.
You didn't expect it to be in your vein of. You didn't expect it to be your cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I thought it was something that I would be able to appreciate and give a fair review and be able to say, you know, this is what I like about it. I played this album more times in the last year than Hypnotic Eye I probably played more, but this album I probably played quite a bit. I just really like this album. I think if I had to pick 3 of my favorite albums of the year, it would be Hypnotic Eye, Rich Robinson's Ceaseless Sight, and The War on Drugs, Lost in the Dream. Those are probably my 3 favorite albums of the year. I mean, it's just a really good, rootsy, sort of psychedelic rock album, and I don't really know what else to say about it. It's just a great album from beginning to end, and definitely check this album out. The next album is Beck's Morning Phase. Beck is an interesting songwriter. This is
no kidding.
This was supposed to be a companion or a sequel to his 2002 album Sea Change. Doesn't really feel that way in terms of the sonics of the album or the songwriting, the structures of the songs. A little bit more country, actually, a little bit. I actually really like this album as well. It's more mellow. It's more of a, like I say, it's more of a Sunday morning album than a Saturday night album. Another album that there really isn't a bad song on, and definitly worth checking out. I don't think you've heard it.
I have not had a chance to hear it, but it sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yeah,
so I might, borrow that.
The next one is Benmont Tench. Benmont Tench is the keyboard player for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and he's never put out a solo album before, although he's always written songs. And I think throughout the Heartbreakers' career, he was always intimidated to present his songs, because when you have, Tom Petty and Mike Campbell writing such great songs, you don't want to. It's the same reason Dave Grohl never presented his songs to Nirvana. But he finally put out a solo album. It was produced by Glyn Johns, who's a legendary producer, produced the Rolling Stones and many others. And this is again, it's a Sunday morning album. It's more mellow. It's got got two Bob Dylan covers. One is Duquesne Whistle, which is from Bob Dylan's newest album, and Carina Carina, I think that's the one that made it to the album. And Ben Montench is just a great songwriter. You don't expect someone to be who's, I don't want to say in the background, but who's known for being a good session musician, such a good piano player, such a good musician. It's not surprising, but you don't really expect such great songs to come from someone like him.
You don't think to look in that direction.
Exactly. Yeah.
More so. But, it actually doesn't surprise me at all, because it's just, I don't know, maybe something about the way he carries himself. You almost expect, gee, I wonder what he's got hidden up his sleeve. And with, I guess, this album, you sort of get to find out a little bit about that. So
yeah, and he did write one song that made it on the Mudcrutch album. Oh, yeah. And Mudcrutch's first song that they ever recorded, called On the Street, which you can find on the playback box set. Yeah. He wrote that, but Tom Petty sang it. But other than that, he never really was known as a songwriter. I'm glad that this album got attention. He even got an interview on Mark Maron's podcast, which is really interesting.
I sat and listened to that.
Some insights into his life and how he got involved with the Heartbreakers. And he actually formed the Heartbreakers between Mudcrutch and Tom Petty's solo album. It's an interesting listen if you can find the podcast with Mark Maron. And the last album is actually one that I haven't heard, but John has. It's Zeus's Classic Zeus.
Yes. So the tables have turned.
Yeah.
Aha. Anyway, yes. Classic Zeus. How do I describe this? It's a little bit of a mellower direction for Zeus. They're known for being, their live shows are pretty, hard rock and whatnot, but their melodies are what always have me coming back. And this album is definitely it lives up to that. I remember talking to them and saying, "Okay, guys, well, you know what? Next year," like they had told me that they were going to be putting out the album.
Yeah.
Or that they were working on an album.
You met them at one of their shows.
I met them at two of their shows, but
it's not like we know them.
No, we don't actually know them.
We met them after. Yeah.
But okay. Yeah. But and I was talking to them and they were talking about how we're putting together some stuff, and I think we might be putting out an album. And okay, yeah, well, come back with my favorite album of next year.
Yeah.
So that's what I told them, and it's up there. Yeah, definitely. It's a worthy listen to. It's and like I say, it is mellower than the previous two albums, but it's not without it's pretty well rounded actually. Yeah. So.
Sounds good. Yeah. So those are our favorite albums of the year. Again, we didn't rank them because it's hard to pick a favorite. It's hard to... Yeah. But those are 11 albums that we really liked this past year. Let us know in the comments what your favorite albums of the year. Did our list match up with yours, or was there an album that we maybe missed? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe so you know when we post new videos. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook. Follow John on Twitter at Funky Dutch. You can help us out on Patreon. There's some really cool perks there. Like you can get a classic album, your favorite album. I can review that. You can link to your art project or something on our website, on our sponsors page, and some really cool perks, as well as the website, of course, polyphonicpress.net. That is actually our last video of the year. We're going to be taking 2 weeks off, and then we're coming back on January 5th with a brand new album review. And I guess that's about it.
We're coming back officially mid-decade.
Yeah. So, that's it. I'm Jeremy Boyd.
I'm John Van Dyke.
Take it easy.